Radhe. Okay, we're live for our weekly open Q&A. What I'm going to do is look at the chat window, see when a question grabs my attention, and then reply to it. And then when I'm done, I'll close my eyes again and let you know that it's time to ask another question, then look for the next new one. Somebody wants to talk about the Elder Scrolls. We have to do a different YouTube channel for that. So anybody? Hey, Babuchka, you're back. Let's see, what's my first question for today? Okay, Sade Sati. I can talk about Sade Sati, but do I want to talk about Sade Sati? Too many people talk about Sade Sati. You make too much of a big deal out of it. It's like saying, if I could think of a really good example. I mean, just think about it. Sade Sati is a 7.5 year period, right? So during this whole 7.5 year, I mean, what are you going to say about a 7.5 year period? It's a very, very long period. And basically, you just have this condition where Saturn is coming over your moon, and it's not even really close. It's like in these other signs next to the moon, the other side of the moon. In other words, what I can really tell you about Sade Sati is that it's given way too much importance. It's just like Mercury retrogrades. They happen all the time. So it's a fun thing to talk about. It draws up a lot of traffic, makes a lot of conversation because it's always going on. Same thing with Sade Sati. Somebody's always got a Sade Sati going on. It lasts for so long. So it's a big conversational piece and it's easy to talk about it. But it's really not that significant in and of itself. The transit of Saturn to your moon, to the actual degree of your moon, now that's significant. Okay, let's see what else we got. We got a question here about identical twins. Jack, I'll tell you what, if you give me more detail about what you want me to talk about with identical twins, then I'll address it. Arvind wants to know how we know what Ayanamsha is accurate for the Nakshatras. And then says, is it even correct to rely on star positions for Nakshatra? Should we consider the galactic center as a basic? All right. Basically, what you have with Ayanamsha is 15 different Ayanamshas that are just about exactly the same. Now, I know everybody's going to say, no, it's not exactly the same. There's 2 degrees difference. There's 3 degrees difference. Folks, this is not that much of an exact science. It's astrology. Okay? The 90% of what's going on in astrology is intuition and interpretation, not measurement. It is important to get the 10% of the measurement correct, yes, but it's not so correct that, minutiae of degrees is going to make or break your reading. So basically, the way I see the Ayanamsha issue is there's about 15 different flavors of vanilla, but they're all vanilla. Except for one of our friends, will know this person very well, except for Ernst Willem. He's got a crazy Ayanamsha calculation. Crazy because it's quite different. So he's really proposed the only Ayanamsha that I know of that's kind of radically different. It's not vanilla flavor. It's more like Oreo cookie flavor ice cream. It's a couple of degrees different, more significantly amount different, because his theory is that it should be mapped not to the ecliptic, but to the equator. He has some reasoning why it works that way, but I've never been able to agree with that reasoning. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't use that one. So I just say, whatever Ayanamsha you pick, you're going to be basically in the same place. So just pick an Ainamsha, just Lahiri. Actually, though, if you want to get very technical and careful with it, it does seem like the Pushapaksha Ainamsha is maybe more accurate than the Chitrapaksha. That's my opinion there. Galactic center, part of your question is, I never heard about a galactic center in any, it sounds like something from Scientology or something, galactic center, and people from Nibiru and stuff are going to come out of this galactic center black hole and eat me. I never heard a galactic center mentioned in Surya Siddhanta. Maybe it is, I don't know. But the way that I understand Nakshatras is based on Dhruva, which is the North Pole. And so you have to have a right angle between the North Pole and the ecliptic, in my opinion, right? And then the nakshatras have to be based on that. The nakshatra divisions are not exactly the stars. They coincide with the stars. The stars are close to the nakshatra, the actual nakshatra borders, but the nakshatra borders are mathematical constructs based on the North Pole, Dhruva, and the plane that it intersects, which should be the ecliptic. All right. Let's see. Let's look for some new questions. See what else we got here. I should probably wear my glasses, but I feel self-conscious when I wear my glasses. Okay, Jack is referring to his question about identical twins. He says, what chart should we consider to analyze identical twins charts? I know two persons who are identical twins, and one is in India and the other is in the US. I wonder if that means that you know one set of identical twins and one is in the US and one is in India, or you know two sets of identical twins. I'm not quite sure which one you mean. So let's see. Well, first of all, you don't try to make one rule for anything that applies to everybody, but here's a general rule of thumb. Identical twins are not always born. They don't pop out at the same time. So they're not exactly born at the same time. They're not going to have exactly the same chart. In fact, oftentimes they can be 10, 15, 20 minutes different, often an hour. I've heard of even up to 2 hours difference. So, and they're still twins. They're still born by the same mother at the same time in the same place. So first, just look at your actual birth time. It may even cross the border of a major zodiac sign. You know, one may be born at the end of Gemini, the other may be born at the beginning of Cancer. But then obviously, your obvious answer to the question of, if you have two charts that are really close together, what chart should you look at? You should look at the smallest chart, which is the 60th chart. That's where you would find your most time-sensitive changes to things. Okay? See, you can ask a follow-up on this one. I'll probably be able to follow your questions more about this twin stuff. Thank you, Floating Wisdom. I love the sessions, too. It's so interesting to me how you guys seem to love these. Like, I would think, in my mind, you guys would... I would love like making some great video. It's like really artistically wonderful and I put all these cool graphics in there. But these videos where I just sit around and talk, you guys like them even more. Cool with me? All right, here's another question. Pradeep Vamula. Let me see if I liked your question before. Sorry, I said your name before. I see if I like your question. The seventh lord in a deuced on a house, like the 12th, but still owns what kind of... I can't ask that. Try to ask me that question again. Zephyrina wants to know combustion of two planets together. I can't really understand that question, so ask me that one again. When is combustion harmful? Well, I did a whole video on combustion with Parisa. She asked me a whole bunch of questions about combustion. It's not too long ago. So just go back to my YouTube channel after we're done and look for that video, and then all your questions about that, all of your questions about that will be answered. Aha! Babushka, your question about lifespan is also just too huge of a scope to answer in a Q&A. It's the topic of centuries of astrological research, is how to determine the lifespan. Lisa, you got a question that's kind of well suited. I feel like addressing this one. She says, "Can you explain Bhavat, Bhavam?" And I know you apply it to the houses, but can you apply it to planets? Like fourth from Saturn is the storage of Saturn. Okay. The people that like me are going to love this. The people that hate me are going to hate this. But this is, this is where my personality comes out right now. And I'm going to say, this Bhavat, Bhavam stuff is mostly a bunch of garbage. The principle of, so okay, first of all, what's the word mean? Bhavat, Bhavam. Bhavat means from the Bhava, and Bhavam means the Bhava as the object of the sentence. So, and Bhava means a house, a place where things exist. So it means a house from a house, houses from houses. Bhavat, Bhavam in English means houses from houses, or relative house. So for example, you might say, here's the fourth house, and then this one over here is the fourth house from the fourth house. Or here's the fourth house, it represents the mother, and that one over there is the seventh house from the mother. So since the seventh house represents the spouse, the seventh house from the mother should be the spouse of the mother, and so therefore the 10th house should be the father. That's Bhavat Bhavam. It works perfectly for that. And this is where it's meant to be utilized. This is where it originated. It originated with figuring out family relationships. Because you have basic spouse, mother, and self. You just have spouse and mother, right? And you have brothers, like in third. And then based on those few little definitions, you can figure out who's the second cousin of this or that if you do Bhavat Bhavam. That's what it's meant for. It's not meant for figuring out what houses signify. It's really not. Now I know but such and such astrologer does this and so does that, and it works wonderful. Great, I know that. I know things work. It doesn't mean I have to do it that way or agree with it or explain it to you, Or it also doesn't mean that it makes any sense to a person who analyzes it logically. For example, the fifth house, what does that represent fundamentally? Children. The fourth house, what does that represent fundamentally? Mother. But have you ever noticed that the fourth house is the 12th house from the fifth? The 12th house ruins the first, right? So if you do Bhavat Bhavam, you should get the mother ruining the child. It's completely wrong. Or the second house is the thing which supports the child. The sixth house. Bhavat Bhavam doesn't work. Don't go there to understand the meanings of houses. Go there to understand how family members are, to figure out complicated family relationships, use Bhavat Bhavam. To figure out meanings of houses, just like we did in our level 1 intensive course, you just need to know the grand cross in the sky, the east to the west, the sunrise to sunset, what those symbolize, and the up and down, the public and private, what that symbolizes. And based on that, you figure out the meaning of all the houses. Okay? So if there's one thing you can take away from this Q&A session, is to be more suspicious of ideas that come to you that are based on the idea of Bhavat Bhavam, or houses from houses. That can be a real downer then, because I always put the brakes on a lot of ideas. Let's see what else we got here. Go ahead. Zephyrina, you're asking about premature births. So what's the problem? But there's no question there. I mean, it's no problem. Your birth starts from the moment that you take a breath. Because your mental self integrates with your physical self through prana. Prana is a kind of an oxygen that allows electrochemical impulses to fire. And it's as a result of these electrochemical impulses and the ability to integrate with them that the mental, subtle, non-physical self can integrate with the physical self. While the child is in the womb, they're getting prana, of course, otherwise they wouldn't be living. The body wouldn't be developing, but it's the mother's prana, it's coming through the mother. So the child in the womb hasn't identified with their body. They have a vague identification with it, but they're not sure whether it's them, whether they're them, whether they are that body that is developing inside this cramped up space, or whether they're the mother, or whether there's some combination of the two. They haven't developed a clear sense of their identity until they come out and they take a breath. That's when the first connections are established between the mental creature and the physical creature. So it doesn't matter if you come out naturally or unnaturally. If you come out and take a breath, that's when the process starts. And the way that the universe is configured at the moment that the process starts is your map, your hint, your coded message about the karma that's going to be delivered to you during that birth. Okay, so premature, not premature, cesarean, not cesarean, doesn't make a difference. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Should I scroll forward? Like last time I gave you a chance, right? I'll give you a chance now. I'm going to close my eyes, but there's this delay on the thing, right? So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to... What mantra should I say? Something that's relatively long. Yeah, okay. I'll say the introductory verse from the Bhagavatam. By the time I'm done with it, I'll look at this chat window, and the first question that catches my eye will be the next one that I address. Ready? Jannamadi yasya yaton vayad itaratas chartesho bhighna sarat tene brahmaridaya adikavaye muyanti yat suryaha tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargo mrishaha dhamna svaina sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. All right. Wow, okay, here's this one. Erin, she says, they say blondes have more fun. But what nakshatra do you think has the most fun? Did you know that Mula Niriti has two features, one with black hair and one with blonde hair? One with black skin and one with golden skin. So Mula can actually have a lot of fun. But it can also be really crazy fun. However, if you look in Nakshatra Sutra, the sauciest sutra, the sexiest sutra, well, there's several sexy ones. I mean, it's actually surprising how sexy the Vedas are. The sauciest sutra that Mrigashirsha is a little bit way more sexy than you would think, but it's kind of veiled and it's softly stated because that's the nature of Mrigashirsha in that sutra. But the one that's really the saucy one is Anuradha. So Anuradha has more fun. The sutra for Anuradha is Mitrasya Anuradha Abhyarohana Parastat Abhyaruda Avastat. That's the Nakshatra Sutra for Anuradha, which means that love's reward needs powerful what does it need? It needs really good pelvises, really good elevated pelvises to mount and rise to and thereby rise to a higher state. So that's the nakshatra that has the most fun, I think. Okay, let's see what else we got. Here, Babushka asks, do remedies work? And if yes, does that interfere unfavorably what was originally charted for you? This is a wonderful question. Remedies. So what she means is, let's say the astrologer tells you that you're going to get hit by a car. And then you say, oh no, what can I do about this? And the astrologer says, well, you just need to buy this amulet from me. And then you'll be protected. And you won't get hit by a car. And sure enough, you don't get hit by a car when you buy this amulet. This astrologer is great. And then you tell your children, your grandchildren, how great the astrologers were in your day, that they used to be able to give you these amulets that would protect you from getting hit by cars and eaten by tigers. So is that stuff junk, or does it actually work? Well, it actually is both junk and it works. Some people use it like the way I just described, and it's junk. But actually, just because there's junk in the basket doesn't mean that everything in the basket is bad. This is astrology as a whole. This is religion as a whole. This is life as a whole. Just because there's idiots involved in it doesn't mean that everything about it is idiotic. It just means that there are idiots involved in it. So are there cheaters and stuff, or are there ridiculous remedies in astrology? Yes, definitely. But do remedies work? Yes, definitely. Remedies work if you approach them right, know really what they really are, and have a real useful remedy. They're like therapies. So then she wants to know, does that interfere with what was originally charted for you? No. This is also, I really, really, really I recommend and request people to read this one book that I wrote that sells the least, but it's probably the most important book. The book is called Beautifully Rational Philosophy of Astrology. You can get it on Amazon. It's a short book too. You don't have to enroll in a college course to read it. But all of the questions are based on misunderstanding the foundations of astrology. Or questions of this nature, Many of the questions like this, they would just be answered automatically if you had a clear understanding of what karma is, and what you are, what life is, what's going on, what's destiny. So it's not like something is destined to happen to you, and therefore you can do a remedy and make it go away, and therefore you can cheat the system. That's not the way remedies work. What's going on actually is we live in a mother's womb. This is our womb. The universe is the mother's womb. We live in this. And this mother is raising us to be born into the real world one day through moksha. So she's taking care of us. It's not like an ordinary womb, though. We actually have our little dreams and we're moving around and doing things. And so she's rewarding and punishing the good and bad things that we do, the things that are conducive to becoming the type of person that we need to become to be able to be born into the real world. She's going to reward those. That's called karma, or in English usually we say good karma. And then the things that we do in this womb of a world which are not conducive to us being able to exist in the real world, she's going to punish those. That's called vikarma, or in English they just say karma, or they say bad karma. Now, the way that you would deal with raising your own child is the same way that the universe deals with you. If the child is unrepentant and adamant and egotistical, then your punishments only become more and more strict and severe. But if the child is very humble and helpful and wants to be a good child, everybody makes mistakes, but some people don't want to. Some people want to be good. Then your parenting of that child becomes so much more gentle and easy, and you don't even need to give them strict and harsh punishments. The child is not cheating the system by behaving in a way that the parent feels doesn't require punishment. The child is actually conforming to the system. So similarly, what remedies really are is our willingness, our willing effort to rectify things that we require to be punished for. And the most effective remedies are the remedies that change the way you look at the world. Putting a ring on your finger is not the best remedy. Is there some magic power in a gem? Maybe there is. Crystals, they're amazing. You can touch a crystal, you can feel that it has some power in it. Is there magic power in it? Maybe. Can it change your karma? Maybe. But nothing is as powerful as the magic that's in your mind. Nothing in this world is as powerful as the magic that is you. Not Merlin's hat, not a staff of fire bolts, nothing like that. All right, Kirati, did you hear that? We did a little ESO, if she's still around. Nothing is as magical as the magic that is consciousness, that is you. You can change your life by your decisions more than any amulet or aroma or flower or color of clothes that you wear. But what you do with the amulets, aromas, and colors of clothes and stuff is help your internal self change. That's what the remedies are for. But the most powerful remedies are the mantras. Second is the ritual. A ritual where the symbolism of the ritual is understood and contemplated while it's performed is a very powerful way of doing it. And then the mantra is even more powerful than a ritual, because the mantra is just words, and it's just going directly into your consciousness and changing your consciousness. So the best remedies are mantras. They change the way we think about ourselves and the world, and therefore they achieve the corrective measure that the karma was trying to achieve. And so the karma therefore lets up. I don't need to act this way on this person anymore. They already got the point. Just like a parent lets up on the child who already gets the point. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was a fantastic question. All right, here we go. Let's see. I'm going to do another verse, and we'll see what other questions we have. What would be another verse? I should plan out this a little bit more in advance. Next time I'll have different verses for you. This time I'll do Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Yena. So type your questions now. Tasmai Shri Guruve Nama Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapada Kamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitantan Sajivan Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha. Now I'm looking for your next question that catches my eye. This is kind of a good... Okay, somebody says she's been trying to ask this 5 times. Asa 17. Okay, so Venus Uttarashad 29 degrees, Sagittarius 10th house. Consider the 10th house or the 11th house. You just said it's in the 10th house, so why don't you consider it 10th house? Next question. Do the Nakshatras keep the same padas with the tropical zodiac as with the sidereal? No. Okay, cardinal drama? No, they don't. Let's talk about the padas for a second. The Jyotish of the Vedanga Jyotish from Rik and Yajurveda, talks about dividing nakshatras into subdivisions, such as 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, much like the way that we divide Rashis. And it doesn't give any particular importance to 4. However, after 25 centuries roughly ago, Vedanga Jyotish is at least 30 centuries or more. That's a record of astrology from at least 30 centuries ago. It predates the time in history where the development of mathematics had returned to the point that the zodiac of 12 divisions could be utilized again, because it's very difficult to utilize the 12. We don't realize this because everything with us now is calculations, and the computers do them all for us. But it was not possible for them to utilize the 12 zodiac divisions because you can't see them at all. They're just the sunlight. They're sections of the sunlight. That's why they're called Rashis. They're divisions of the sun's path. Whereas the stars you can see, it's much easier to do even without math. So it wasn't until about 25 centuries ago that Rashis became viable. Not that the theory always existed, and probably from ancient ages where the math was there before the Kali Yuga decimation happened to human culture. But in this Kali Yuga, it didn't become usable again until about 25 centuries ago. So at that time, the Indian traditions, everybody throughout the world, they mapped the 12 zodiac divisions to the stellar counterparts because the math was not perfect. So they wanted to be able to check by eye. So half the time you can see. Like you could see, well, Saturn is near this star. I can see that. Where is that star in relation to the 12 signs? Let me see if my math would come up with the same answer. And that's how they would check their math, to make sure that because they would regularly be 4 to 6 degrees off in their calculations. So they mapped the zodiac signs to the stars. And then it was shortly thereafter that Hipparchus said, hey, that's not such a great idea, because the relationship between the stars and the signs isn't constant. It changes gradually. But what happened in India was when they mapped these signs to the Nakshatras, because they had a very elaborate system of stars and they loved it. They wanted to keep it. And so then they found all these cool interactions between Navamshas and Nakshatras and all this stuff. And so they just kept with it. And they said, look, this is why 4 is really important. The division of a nakshatra into 4 parts is really important because it exactly is the same as the Navamsha, and the Navamsha is so important because it's the chart of Dharma. And Dharma is the essential nature of a thing. So since that time, the Navamsha division into 4 padas became prominent, and then they just said, well, this is exactly the same as the Navamsha, so this segment of the nakshatra is just like this Navamsha. But if you realize what's really going on, that the Navamshas, that the Nakshatras and the Rashis with their Amshas are changing their relationship to one another constantly, then you realize that isn't really working. So my suggestion is to forget about padas. Try to understand the Nakshatras the way the Vedas teach the Nakshatras, which is what I'm going to do in this course. We're going to teach you the Nakshatras based on how the Taittiriya Brahmana of Yajurveda teaches the Nakshatras. Okay, so that's my recommendation there. Let's see if we see 1 or 2 other ones. Parisa, you say you're thoroughly enjoying this. Hey, everybody, look, Parisa's here too. She's fairly famous from the weekly one, right? Taittiriya, somebody wants to know the Taittiriya Brahmana Nakshatra from Mula. It's not in my head right now. It's just that I had been working on Anuradha yesterday. So that sutra is fresh in my mind. Mula is a bit... Mula... It's a little bit... It's not fresh in my mind, so I can't give it to you now. All right, here we go. All right, Aaron, in my next how-to video, can I use the chart of Rick James or Jim Jones? I would definitely use Rick James over Jim Jones. All right, here we go. I'm going to look for the next question. I'm giving you a moment to type it in. Then I'm going to scroll to the bottom and see what it is. This time what I'm going to do is just play a little beat. Maybe I'll play a little beat for you. I got all these musical instruments around. You never hear me play anything. Okay? Now, we'll see what the question is. Chris Freddy, do you know about Kazimi? It is exception to combustion if conjunct of planets within the same degree. Yes. Please. Sorry, Lakshmi. Please go to my YouTube channel. Go to the channel page if you want to know about Kazimi. And look at the interview that I did with Parisa about combustion. We talk about it there in length. Angel, you say, why do most planets hate the moon. Where did you get that information? Oh, maybe you're right. I need to think about that. That's a strange question. Why do most planets hate the moon? Maybe I'll start with that one in my next Q&A. Jerome, because you used capitals, I shouldn't be answering your question, but I will. Yeah, Kazimi works. Jerome, he says planets and nakshatras directly across from each other, an own sign like Jupiter, Purvashad, Mercury, Ardra. Well, what's the question? The question, what? Is if they aspect each other? Ask me. I'll look for your next comment. You got to clarify this question. I don't know what the question is. This is a nice question here. How did man initially connect to the stars? How did man initially connect the stars to all life? How did they connect each planet to its energy? How did they come up with something called Nakshatras? What was the initial spark of astrology? What a wonderful question. So also from this book that I mentioned before, Beautifully Rational Philosophy of Astrology, addresses this point in detail. So if you could get that book and read it, it'll help answer questions like this in more detail. But basically, you look at things and make sense out of things. That's what buddhi does. That's what living creatures do. That's what consciousness does. We look at things and we make sense out of them. So when you look at a red planet, when you look at a red star in the sky, it conveys a certain meaning to you because it's red. And when you notice the movement of it is erratic and strange, that conveys a certain meaning to you. When you look at another planet that's beautifully brilliant, sparkly, and bright, Venus, that conveys a certain meaning to you. When you look at another planet that's bright and steady, that conveys another meaning. When you look at another one that's very dim and moves real slow, that gives you another meaning. You don't have to make it up. The meaning is evident in the visuals. When you look at the eastern horizon and you see that the sun rises, so this is how you get meaning from the planets. When you look at the eastern horizon and you see that the sun rises over there, you get meaning from that. This is where things begin, and this is where things become visible in the east. So that area of the house, that area of the sky is called the first house. So therefore the first house has its symbolism. When you look at the west, the sun disappears over there. So that's what it symbolizes. It symbolizes things disappearing. It symbolizes the opposite of what's over there in the east. So the seventh house over there signifies disappearance, death, going away. When you look up above you, you can see things. When you look down below you, you can't see anything. It's blocked by the ground. So the house that's up above you is the 10th. That signifies public life. The house that's below you underneath, that's the moon. It signifies private life. Inside the home. 10th house, outside the home. This way you get all this. You get all the fundamental symbols of the houses. Then when you think about the sun's movement over the course of a year and how it moves north and south of the celestial equator, you can figure out meanings there. And it comes into this sign, it starts to move in a new direction. When it comes into this portion of its orbit, it moves in a new direction, so it's cardinal. But now in this next portion, it keeps moving in the same direction, so it's fixed. And then at the third segment, it starts to slow down and starts to change direction, but it hasn't changed yet, so it's dual. And then you give symbolism to the signs based on that. Like that. We just look at the world because we live in this world, and the world is part of us. Like I said before, we're living in a womb. And so you look around because this is part of you. You are not, the entity is not divorceable from its environment, the Dham and the Dhami. So you look at the world, you make sense out of it with your intelligence, and then you develop a system of astrology. Hopefully that gives you the spark of the answer, or at least gives you confidence that there is a good answer. Here's an interesting question. How do early degree planets behave? From Evelyn. So that's a nice question. It depends on whether the sign is male or female. As you may know, the first, third, fifth, seventh, etc., ninth, 11th signs are male. Because males are odd. No, because odd numbers have an edge to them. Their shape is not balanced, so they have an edge, and that's the male symbol. Is that it has a directed energy. It moves a lot. The odd numbers move a lot. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Those signs: Aries, Gemini, Leo, etc. Those are male signs, and then 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 are female signs. So whether the degree of a male sign, the early degrees signify beginning and the late degrees signify end. And then in the female sign, the early degrees signify end and the later signs signify beginning. So, and then there's a spectrum in between. So if you have a planet that's at the early degrees of a male sign, then you should interpret it to mean that this, whatever stuff is connected with that planet, like whatever interpretations you're assigning to that planet based on the house that it's in, the sign that it's in, etc., type of planet that it is, the aspects that it has, whatever, everything. Whatever interpretations you're working out for that planet, because it's at an early degree, you should know that there's a new things for this person. It's coming into their life newly. It's coming into their conscious experience of the world newly in this lifetime. So they're not going to be very experienced at it. They're going to stumble at it. Yet they're going to have enthusiasm, that new enthusiasm for it. Whereas if you see something at the end of a male sign, or in the middle of a male sign, in the middle of either side, and then it's going to be like at the prime of life. So here's things that still have their newness, they still have their attractive newness to them, but there's still a little bit of mastery involved. And then when you get to the end of a male sign or the beginning of a female sign, whatever interpretation you have of that planet, you should frame it in the context of, here's an old thing. This person's been doing this for many lifetimes already, and they're ready to finish this. They're tired of it. They're ready to give up on this. They're ready to just complete it and move on. That's what I'll say about the early degrees. Holiday. Why do some astrologers refer to Uttara Bhadrapada as facing ignorance? I don't know. I would have to ask them why they do. I can try to tell you why you might be. I mean, what Uttara Bhadrapada really is all about is figuring out the true meaning of good. Bhadra means good, goodness, and pada means meaning. So what does good really mean? And the problem that Uttara Bhadrapada confronts is that this thing was supposed to be good. Here was I got a really good banana, and then it turned black. I had a really good game, but then I finished it. I had a really great relationship, but then he died. Or then he left me. So the problem that Uttara Bhadrapada is trying to address is, what is really the meaning of good then, if everything even that is supposed to be good is ending? So if you want to call that facing ignorance, you can call it facing ignorance, but that's really what Uttara Bhadrapada is all about. All right, I'm going to scroll down. Jerome, you're really trying to get me to answer this question, but I can't. I'm sorry, I can't understand your question. What would the relationship between planets in own sign and directly opposite nakshatras? Sorry, I can't figure out the question. If somebody else can figure out the question, let me know. Type it in. Help them out with the wording. All right. Want to do another question? I'll give you the lead-in time. Let's see. What's a nice verse? Sarva dharman prityajya mam ekam sharanam braja. Aham tam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Manmana bhava madbhaktau madhyajimam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. All right. let's see what kind of questions you got. You got any new questions, or should I just go look back? All right. So, Jerome, what's the relationship between planets that are directly opposite each other? Who knows? You got to look at the details. Sorry. You got to look at the details. But the one thing that you know is if they're directly opposite each other, then they make a mutual aspect to each other. That's the one thing that you know. Here's an interesting question. What's the difference between the 10th house and the D1, D9, and D10? Well, there's no difference, right? It's the 10th house. So it signifies the same thing. However, the subcharts like D9, the Navamsha, and D10, Dashamsa, they have a certain context to them. Each subchart, each Amsha chart or Varga chart has a certain context to it in which it's framed. So the context of the Navamsha, for example, is Dharma, which means what's your essential nature? Who are you really? And what kind of person are you going to always wind up being, even if you try not to be? That's what Dharma is, the thing that you can't change. So what's the question again? Yeah, what's the difference between... So the 10th house in the Dharma chart is going to just show you like what kind of mark do you want to leave behind on the world, because it's showing what's your public life like, and specifically in the context of Dharma. Whereas the 10th house in the Dashamsha chart, the Dashamsha chart's context is your mark on the world. So the 10th house in the Dashamsha chart is more like what are you doing in the world? What's your actual career? So it's just like you just in the subcharts, just take what the house naturally represents and frame it in the context of what that subchart represents. Okay, so like take the 5th house. The 5th house represents intelligence, the ability to understand others, the ability to communicate with others, love, the ability to exchange with others, and creativity, and children, the ability to create others. Now, take that into another subchart. Just put it in the context of that subchart. If you put it in the 7th subchart, Saptamsha, then it really has a lot to do with love and creativity, because the 7th is a passionate Amsha chart. If you put it in, and maybe children, if you put it in the 9th Amsha chart, then the 5th house is the same things, but especially it's about what's your ability to understand Dharma, what's your ability to understand life. Evelyn, is there an association between the 12th house and marriage? No, not inherently. The 12th house is the house that erodes the first. So the 12th house is, the first house represents where the sun comes up, and therefore what you can see. And so the 12th house represents the weather that erodes that stuff. So the 12th house represents non-physical things, intangible things. It drains physical things. Okay, let's see what other questions we got. Can a good Navamsha overpower bad D1 placements? No. Technically, no. But it may reveal to you that these bad D1 placements aren't really also that bad, because they have these aspects that are very good. Right. Holiday wants to know what I think about the coming Mars-Saturn conjunction. It depends on... it's going to affect everybody differently. So if this Mars-Saturn conjunction is... if your birth chart has something at that degree where that's going to happen, then it's going to be really important to you. It's probably going to be a little difficult, because Mars and Saturn are difficult conjunctions. What does it mean, just mundane-wise speaking? It usually means some kind of conflict, but that's what happens all. all the time. There's always conflict in this world. Huh. So many interesting questions popping up again. All right. What do we got? 10 more minutes? Why is Magga so powerful when Aryaman is the ruler of the Pitris? See, this would be also good to do some background study on Vedic stuff. Aryaman isn't necessarily the ruler of the Pitris, he's just the best Pitri. Yama is the ruler of the Pitris. Yama is the deva of Bharani. Bharani is also a very powerful nakshatra. Aryaman's nakshatra is, guess what? Guess what the Taittiriya Brahmana reveals about Aryaman's nakshatra? Aryaman's nakshatra is, according to Taittiriya Brahmana, without a doubt, repeated in every place where Aryaman is mentioned with the nakshatra, Purva Palguni, not Uttara Palguni. And I'm going to give the reason why, and why it makes sense when we do the course. So what the Purva Palguni is also a Ugra nakshatra. So find all of these guys connected with Pitris, Yama, Pitris, Aryaman. They all have powerful nakshatras, strong nakshatras. So that should make sense now. Boritan Perez asks, can you explain the meaning of the ascendant for the Vedic perspective and how will the native be integrated with it? The meaning of the ascendant is this is where things ascend. This is where things rise. And so when things rise, they become visible. That's like what I was saying. Somebody said, how did all this symbolism come into being? It's because you just look at it and it's very simple. The ascendant is where stuff comes into your view. It comes over the eastern horizon. Now you can see it. So the ascendant means the thing is being born. It's being produced in the real world and you can see it. So if you have a chart about a country, then it means this is when this country was formed. If you have a chart about some event, it means this is when this event took place. If you have a chart about a person, it means this is the thing that was born. The thing that became real at this moment is in that house, the ascendant's house, the first house. That's what the ascendant is, whether it's Vedic or not Vedic. That's what it means in house-based astrology. Let's see what else we got here. Visu, nice to see you here. Visu, according to Taittiriya Brahmana, since Bhaga is considered the deity for Uttara Palguni, does the original interpretation of Uttara Palguni change now? It doesn't really change, but it's going to become more interesting. You'll see. Take the course, or I'll put out a new book. So it changes a little, but you still have the same basic principles. Both of the Palgunis are Palguni. Palguni means the one who produces a fruit. Pala means a fruit. Palguni means one who can make a fruit. So it's like, these are sexy nakshatras. These are nakshatras that are fertile nakshatras. They're creative, they're artistic, they're beautiful nakshatras, both of them. But the first one is the more aggressive one. It's the male-oriented one. That's why Aryaman is there. The second one is the female one. It's the more patient one. That's why Bhaga should be there. If you know words, Aryaman is a very male word and Bhaga is a very female word. That's basically the only difference. They're both sexy. In fact, Purva Palguni can be more sexy than Uttara Palguni because it has a lot of confidence, because it has male energy in it. Although it would be the Bhaga's nakshatra, which is now, according to the Taittiriya Brahmana, the Uttara Palguni, that would be the more attractive, desirable, enjoyable one. Spiral Cosmos Art asks, do you know something about if someone is transiting from a debilitated dasha to a more favorable dasha? Go ahead. Don't be afraid to just use common sense, right? If you are if you have a dasha of a debilitated planet, basically you're looking at a difficult dasha. Don't be afraid to use common sense, but also don't be afraid to not be black and white. Like, don't be afraid to use words like basically. It doesn't mean that it's going to be entirely bad or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, it's debilitated. That's just a very general assessment of the planet. Yeah, it's not detailed about the planet, but something basically that we know about the planet is that it's debilitated. So therefore, something we basically know about the planet's dasha is that it's going to be a difficult dasha. This is what, like, where you start out, like when you make a sculpture, you start out with a big block of rock, and then you just gradually shape the rock. You don't just immediately go in there and start carving the eye, beautiful eye. You gradually shape it. So this is the same way you read an astrology chart. You gradually get a focus on the thing. The planet's debilitated. Okay, this dasha might not be so good. Oh, the planet's in the 7th house. Oh, but the planet actually has a great aspect. Okay, let me change the shape a little bit. And gradually you put more and more things together. And you come up with a reasonable interpretation. Asa wants to know what the most fearful thing to me is. But then why did you put in there spiritually? Let me know that, and then I might want to answer your question. Chris, he asks, why is Ketu assigned to Ashwini, Magha, and Mula? Why not Venus or other planets? It's not assigned. Yeah, if you guys would see, do you know what the problem with social media is? I think I already said this, but I didn't realize that only this. Okay, and I think 1,000 people watch this video, but there's like 9 billion people or something in the world. So I guess you got to say something like 900,000 times. But the planets do not own nakshatras. That's a mistake. And it's just that the Vimshottari Dasha correlates planets to nakshatras in one way. Ashtotari Dasha correlates the planets to the nakshatras in a different way. There's no real correlation. There's no intrinsic correlation between planets and nakshatras. So stop trying to figure out nakshatras based on planets. You're just going to get confused. Just go study something like Taittiriya Brahmana, where the Vedas will teach you about how to understand the nakshatras. If you don't do that, then just go and look at what the other Vedas just at least told you the god and a name, right? So the god and the name, if you know everything about the god, then you'll know about the nakshatra. You don't have to go off into la la land coming up with new theories about this planet rules this nakshatra and this guna and there's 3 layers of gunas and this and that and this and that and this and that. All right, we got 2 more minutes. Go ahead. I'm going to close my eyes. Sorry to all the questions that I didn't answer. Some of them I just didn't see. And some of them I just felt like I don't know that I have something interesting to say in answer to this question. So nothing personal if I didn't. Some of you, who knows, some of you might have felt like you asked the question like 10 times and I didn't even answer it. It wasn't intentional. I apologize about that. And sorry that sometimes I couldn't understand your questions. So I apologize about that too. Eva, do you teach your children astrology? No, but they keep asking me questions about it and I keep explaining things to them. That's just the way I am. Like, I don't really go out and teach people stuff. I wait for them to ask me stuff. Okay, can I create some nakshatra music playlists if I had enough time? I have no time. I can't even create a playlist for my kitchen. Yo, Angel Catalan says, yo, since Brihaspati rules over Pushya, would Jupiter's placement also affect interpretation? No. Don't go there. Just keep it simple. You know that saying, keep it simple? It's really good. Just try to be simple about astrology because astrology is going to be faster. It's going to be more complicated than you can handle. So don't try to make it complicated. Try to make it simple. Just try to get useful, accurate interpretations using simple principles and techniques and a clear mind. That will be the best way to approach astrology. All right, everyone. Had a good time. I had a good time. Thank you so much. I'll come back again next week. Hopefully you liked it. Hopefully I'm not too much of a grump or like, what do they call the people like me? Debbie Downers or like curmudgeons. Maybe a curmudgeon or whatever. Hopefully I'm not too much of that, all that stuff. And if you can think of some better way, if you think this is cool, let me know the way I'm doing it with just like answering the questions whenever I see them. If you think of some better way of doing like some lottery or something of questions, let me know in a comment or something like that. Okay, everyone. Hope you have a great week. See you again next week. Radhe Sham. Best wishes to all of you.